Byron Belitsos is the publisher, editor, and co-author of numerous books dealing with extraterrestrial contact and the mysterious Urantia book that offers a big picture perspective of the universe. In the early 2000s, Byron became fascinated with the extraterrestrial contact story of Philip Kraft, a Pulitzer Prize-winning editor with the Los Angeles Times. More recently, he's become fascinated with the channeled information coming from the Galactic Federation of Light Station, and he has written an extensive report detailing the channeling and the amazing contact that's being released by this Galactic Federation of Light Station.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Well, I want to welcome you back to the show, Byron.
Great to be back. And thank you so much. You know, all of us that follow you, I speak for them. We're grateful for what you do on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my delight to really find out what is happening out there. And there is a lot happening. Now, you, like me, have been tremendously impressed, or we have noticed the information that's being generated by the Galactic Federation of Light Station. I think they call it GFL Station. So, yeah, why don't you tell us, how you got interested in that and what you know?
Thank you again, Michael. And the way this happened for me was just the feed that I was getting was, bringing these images of Ashtar and others that were processed in a kind of a beautiful way. And I'm sensitive to beautiful imagery. And I said, what is this? And that was about 5-6 months ago. But the other reason really was my pessimism about the planet's future. And I was really kind of becoming a doomer, you might say.
Byron, I'm sorry to interrupt, but again, you're right up close to the camera.
I keep doing that, because of hard of hearing, I do that. All right, I'm good. Do you want to start over then?
Yeah. Okay, so I've just done the intro. And so why don't you just tell us about how you got interested in the Galactic Federation of Light Station and their channeled information?
Yeah, Michael, the way this happened was 5 or 6 months ago when I was becoming pessimistic about the Earth's future, to be honest. And so many things are fed to you through YouTube. But this kind of stuck out. And when I watched one or two of them, I was struck by the optimism that they get across and the kind of ambience of good vibes and sort of a love vibe as well that comes across from most, but not all of those transmissions. And in particular, the ones that are giving actual spiritual lessons were pretty impressive. And I say that as a guy that publishes books about this stuff. For over 20 years, I've been publishing books on spirituality and esoteric materials. So this was like, wow, who are these people and how could they pull us off every single day? So like many others, I just fell into this benign rabbit hole, I guess. And you listen and then, and I wake up this morning not feeling good. Let me try and listen. And it lifts you up. But then you find out this is also political and very definitely exopolitical content. And that was, at a certain point in the disclosure movement that things seem to be bogged down. I live in Washington, D.C., so I kind of witnessed that up close. I see Danny Sheehan when he comes into town and the others. I know these guys socially, and so I know that, they're struggling with the disclosure movement at that time, especially. It felt like it was a down period. But now this is this message. And what I began to see is this is a combination of both political, exopolitical, and spiritual that is fairly rare. But it's blending it with tremendous facility. So I should add that I've been in video production and I've been in book production, and looking at it as a businessman, I don't know how these guys pull this off, because there's a high quality and a lot of internal consistency And every day it comes out looking really good. Like, how can they pull this off? And so who's behind this? So the quest has been, and I'm still on the quest, like, who really are these people? The people putting it on, and also the ETs that they're working with. So let's plunge into that, I guess.
Yeah, well, I should mention I first kind of like came across this material while I was lying in hospital after being poisoned.
Oh.
And I was very sick, and I was in a hospital room and for 2 weeks. Wow. And I had nothing to do but to just kind of like sit around and wait for the doctors to give me, to release me from the hospital after putting me on, going through their whole thing. And while I'm sitting in the hospital with all those awful energies there and the television and all of that, I found that these GFL Station channelings were the only thing that really made me feel good. And I started to feel better. Every time I listened to it, I felt better. So I listened to it in the hospital. That was really when I first got into it. And so when I left, I thought, wow, there's something here. I really should get in touch with the creator of this channel and find out, well, is it just AI generated stuff, or are there real people here? Because you get the impression that it's kind of like very slick production and maybe it's made with AI. So I got to speak with David Nichols, the creator of the site, and he's a real person, and he told me about the 8 or 10 different channels that he works with, or channelers, and that they use voiceover artists and they use AI computer generated images for it. And I wanted to interview him, and he said, not yet. At some point when it's appropriate, that he'll agree to be interviewed. But for now, that's what he was putting out. So, I was just tremendously impressed. And talking to him afterwards, I felt this uplift, this energy uplift. And you often feel that when you're in the presence of someone that's a very high vibration. You get a boost. And I felt that from him. So I felt that, this is a very positive source of information that's just kind of come out of nowhere. Right.
And he's been doing it for a while, 3 years. But if you look back at the early ones, it doesn't have quite the technique and quite the same message, actually. So they've grown in their maturing of this message, and also in the processing of the message. And I'm impressed with that too. So in other words, there's a good energy there, the production, creation, and this intention to kind of fan this out to the world. And it's an amazing project and something that we have to, regardless of the criticisms I'm going to be giving, I think overall this is an amazing achievement, and that's something we need right now.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the content, they're doing like up to 2 channelings a day, and it is mainly very uplifting, but with a lot of content. And you're going to kind of, I guess, walk us through different perspectives, and you've prepared a PowerPoint presentation on this. So I don't know, are you ready to dive into that PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, with a little bit more summary, just kind of to justify why I would spend so much time, with this thing, because, there's so many other great sources of information about what's happening in our movement, the ufology movement. And, I was at Contact in the Desert, and there's a lot of different threads that one could follow that you see from the spokespeople in our movement. And why this? Well, I think it's because my theological training has to do with kind of salvation, what will bring kind of a healing to the planet from the stars, from deity, from whatever's out there, and that's why I am a publisher, a book publisher, and an author, and a spokesperson for these ideas. So the reason is really breaking down into 3 parts why I got into this. One is my tremendous pessimism about the Earth future, which is, kind of conventional. All of us are getting to be pessimistic given what's happening out in every domain. And the polycrisis, as they call it, irks all of us. And so that's one perspective. The other perspective is the one I bring, which is theological as a person of faith, that if we have faith in a benevolent deity who's omniscient and omnipresent, we can turn this thing around. And that's really the promise of faith and religion and spirituality, is we can do it. We have the power. We have something within us that can make all the difference. And the third perspective is that's not enough to get past these problems on the planet that are catastrophic. There's a cascade of catastrophic issues that are cascading beyond our ability to solve. These are wicked problems, like the war in Gaza. Like, nobody has a solution to the war in Ukraine. Nobody has a solution to climate change, if it really is the case. Nobody has the pollution of the seas, the pollution of our food, all the rest of it. So why is that the case? Is it just because, from the theological point of view, because we're sinners, we're greedy, that we're grabbing for things without any sense of the ethics of what we're doing? No, I don't think that's right. And I think sort of the Christian message is off in that degree, because there's another view, which is we are not at cause here. We have been, in a sense, genuinely cosmic victims of off-planet forces. So there's a lot of discourses, a lot of people have a lot of different views of this, from Zecharia Sitchin to you name it, right? So what is this off-planet force that has bedeviled us? So the GFL gives us one very good answer to that. So, number one. Number two, the reason we need this benign intervention is that the problems were caused off-world. So off-world forces should solve it. It's like a legal argument. So that there's a tort, so to speak, right? And who is at cause? Well, we need to track that in order to solve the problem. We can't just flail around. So what the ETs are telling us, and they've been saying it for years. I mean, we've been here for a lot of sources, but this is much more coherent and in-depth explanation of the cabal, the so-called global cabal, and how it is rooted in off-planet, almost demonic forces, and that the off-planet forces that are benign are here to support us in overthrowing that. So those three perspectives together are why I think everybody should take GFL seriously.
Yeah, well, what came to mind as you were talking there was that fantastic book by William Bramley, The Gods of Eden. When I first got involved in exopolitics, I read that, and it just really summarized the problem that, going all the way back into ancient antiquity, there's been this kind of sinister third force. He calls them the custodians, but they're extraterrestrials, and that they manipulate both sides of a conflict. And so, what happens from age to age is that you have two sides that go at each other. I mean, today in modern America, of course, it's the liberal progressives, and then you have the kind of like MAGA Republicans, and they're kind of like going at each other, like demonizing and fighting each other. And it's like, well, according to Bramley, it's just like, well, there's a third force that are manipulating the process, so that these two sides see each other as the enemy, and are kind of like blinded to the fact that they're being manipulated by these puppeteers who are using the mass media, using kind of like the political process, and manipulating both sides to go at each other. And so I guess the GFL station reaffirms that. It's like saying that, yes, that's exactly what's going on, and how can we get out of that polarity thinking that if you're on one side or the other, that the other, that the MAGA Republicans are evil, Trump's some evil dictator, and then if you're on the other side, it's just like, these are people that are trying to bring in communism and kind of like remove freedom of speech, and so both sides demonize each other.
And the other piece of it is that I like to bring to this is that the theological, again, is that we have this dilemma on Earth, and it's been noticed, for eons. That's why there are divine interventions. The axial age, for example, think about it. There was Buddha, Zoroaster, there was Abraham. There's all these different teachings that came to Earth suddenly in 6th, 7th, 8th century BC. They started the Hebrew lineage, they started the Buddhist lineage, they started the Zoroastrian lineage, they started other lineages that, Taoism went to China. Why did all this stuff happen at the same time? And it's been remarked by many, like, why, that's like an intervention from the angels or something, to have a Buddha who, was an incredible teacher, and to have the Jewish prophets, the Hebrew prophets were amazing, bring forward, human rights and these great visions of the future. And then, China and what Buddhism did in Japan, all these things came in that period. So I feel that there was an intervention there from above. And then as a Christian, as a mystical Christian, I would say, I'm an Eastern Orthodox Christian, I think the incarnation of Christ was a primary intervention to try to solve this. And even that, these things improved the situation, but even that did not quell these dark forces. And so you have another 2,000 years, but there was progress, there was evolution. So there is this slow incremental progress, but there's now an end times, so to speak, right? So we have sort of the biblical fundamentalist idea of the end times, but we have another idea about the end times, which GFL fills in, but many others do as well. So I find this one to be helpful and coherent, but it also has some important flaws we're going to get to.
Okay. Well, I know you have a presentation to share with us, and that'll introduce people more to the GFL station and what we're talking about. And so I think you have some illustrations.
I do, and I'm going to bring this up right now, and we'll walk through these together.
3, 2, 1.
So thank you, Michael, for inviting me to show this slideshow. The reason for it is that the beauty of their imagery is something everybody should see just by itself. And I've got a lot of those. But we're going to walk through this, and we're going to not just kind of fall down a benign rabbit hole, but we're also going to be friendly critics to what's happening here, because there's so much at stake, you guys, in this outpouring of revelatory information. We need to keep our critical hats on, but also appreciative as well. And I'm very appreciative, but I find some serious flaws that we'll get to in just a few seconds, actually. So I think this is really about this particular slide that they put up. They put up so many memorable images, and this is one of them, showing Christ at the center. So at first I thought of this as, these are Christ-centered ETs. And but to the left of Christ, not sure who that is, European, I think, and then on the right side is an Asian wise man, and behind is Archangel Michael. Of course, you can see sort of angelic beings, and then the ET ships, and this is quite something to take in. And again, to read about this, I've written a 20-page analytical essay. You can go to exorealities.substack. So this kind of right here summarizes the whole thing. On one side is, I summarize it as spirituality conjoined with conspiracy politics, because you get these wonderful teachings, like on the left side of the screen is Tia, an Arcturian. That's the Arcturian Council of Five, and they are blue-skinned. And this is you don't have to read this, but it's just a wonderful teaching about non-duality, that there isn't really a division between you and divinity. It's a beautiful perennial teaching. It's a teaching of Taoism, it's a teaching of Christianity, mystical Christianity, and Buddhism. So that's on one side. But on the other side, you have Ashtar and the Ashtar Command. And here he's talking about the White Hats having secret communications through the White House. So you get these two things conjoined. And what I believe this is, you guys, is this is part of the conspirituality movement. So bear with me, and I'll explain this a little bit. That the beginning of the movement was with David Icke. I mean, we all appreciate what he did. There's got, some difficulties with it, but look how large his legacy is. I looked this up. It's, 250,000 books sold. He's been all over the world. Everybody knows who he is. And that was the beginning, because David Icke, not in the beginning, but not so much, but he really became a spiritual teacher as he pursued this sort of mission. And it was kind of startling to see him give this huge 2-hour teaching on how to meditate. But he's also a conspiracy factualist, not a theorist. Then, if you all remember the Zeitgeist documentary, it was about 15 years ago, but it had a huge audience that had very much the very same kind of confluence of conspiracy ideas and spirituality. That was that particular, they took off from 9/11 Truth and other conspiracies that are true conspiracies, and built up this huge following. Soon thereafter came Gaia TV. Everybody knows Gaia TV. I looked it up, and they have 800,000 monthly subscribers, and it's pretty much the same idea. So I'm asking everybody to think about it. Who's number 4 on here? Is it GFL? I mean, I think they're aiming, from business point of view, it looks like they're going to be on this list. So, the guy meditating here is a funny image of what kind of defines conspirituality, according to the analysts that look at this. And I was amazed to find a pretty interesting literature. There's a male and a female aspect. The male aspect are people like Alex Jones, right? They're hardcore and they're pessimistic and they're punching, trying to get the facts and the kinds of masculine, behavior modality. But there's a feminine side. The feminine side is meditation, sitting with your legs crossed, and you got a Tibetan, gong in front of you. You're trying to get to higher states of so this comes together in some aspects of the MAGA movement and other movements, and it's a bizarre situation that we need to keep in mind as we go through these slides. So I want you to take a moment and kind of bear with me, because I'm going to tell you a little bit of a personal story. I turned in I sent my analysis of GFL to David Nicholas, who is the founder of GFL, based at Vancouver, and asked them to give me comments, or just I had a few questions. And then I went off to a scholarly conference on religion, actually the world's largest conference of religious scholars. So I was there for 4 days, and then I come back, and there's a teaching by this guy named Venn, who's not GFL. He's with the Confederation of Planets, but they're an ally to GFL. And this is an amazing kind of response to me, probably not me personally, but to people like me who are, I'm more or less a religious scholar. And what it says is this kind of anti-scholarship. It's don't turn to scholars, religious scholars. Turn to authentic teachers, and you can see the attributes. It's somebody that radiates presence. It's somebody that have felt that first. It's somebody that invites you into your own spiritual presence. It's somebody that is not trying to persuade, but is showing alignment just through their demeanor. And they don't want you to be loyal to them like a guru. They want you to find your own infinite spiritual presence within you, and to cultivate your own clarity and sovereignty. That's what this long teaching, really a good one.
Byron, can I just interject here, because this is one of the things that really impressed me about the GFL station, listening to their channeled material, is that very often, not all, but many of the channeled messages always get you to focus on your own infinite presence, your own inner light, or the inner sun, they call it, and they get you to kind of focus on that during the channeling, which almost becomes like a meditation, because they're telling you, connect with this inner light, and they're talking about it, and you really do feel it. I mean, I feel it, and that helps me kind of like get this high, from listening to these channelings. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is you hit it. This is exactly what they do. That they're showing that the authentic teacher gets one to connect with that inner source consciousness, as opposed to just stimulating the brain's mental processes and regurgitating ideas.
Thank you, Michael. Feel free to interrupt these things. I tend to go off in tangents, so that was very helpful comment. And you and I are having the same experience here, because I've been a meditator since like 1975, but I'm getting boosted by these messages, not just by the words, obviously, but by the ambience that they create in these, sometimes 50-minute, 1-hour teachings. They're giving a kind of cosmic Sunday school for us. So moving on, here's, they cover all the bases. Like, I've been thinking, well, this is kind of New Age. Oh, my God, it's just rehashing New Age memes. And then around that time I was thinking about that, comes up this, because there's 2 or 3 of these a day. And so this one comes up, and they're talking about the New Age movement, and they're criticizing the New Age movement. The ETs are doing that. It's Valier, who's always really good, really smooth, beautiful mind. This is saying that the New Age is, he called it mentalism, that they're using their will too much to conjure, through, law of attraction, by, overdoing it with your visualizations, and you're kind of forcing your will on the universe. And this is more like, hey man, relax into it. This is the universe loves you. It's omnipresent. So what they don't usually say God, but they do say, they call it the life force, the prime creator, the spirit that's breathing galaxies into being. This is where you need to tune, and so they're kind of putting the New Age movement in its place. But then on the other hand, you see things like this. I copy just these screenshots. Like, what is this? This is showing kind of the world's different religions, with an ET on the left side there. And they're in a temple, but it's like an interfaith temple with overlit by an ET craft. I mean, what's that all about? So here's another one. They say, well, look, we're the ETs, but we're working with the angels. Look at these gorgeous images of angels in heaven. Just lovely depiction here. Of course, these are AI generated, but you can't generate stuff like this if you don't have a pretty good art director that's working with AI. So this is put in here for you guys to see why I think this is a significant planetary movement. They're covering everything that's going on. And this is just in a kind of a 1-week period of what they were posting. This one's about HARP and chemtrails. This one's about coronal mass ejections. This one over here is about Bashar. Look down below. This is on 3i Atlas. This is on Israel and Iran. This one's on Ukraine. This is on the Pope. There's even one on the tariffs. I mean, they're commenting about everything. This gives you a little sample of Ashtar, who's kind of my favorite. I'm a political guy. I like politics. And look at all the things that he's talking about in a period of a month or two. A new financial system, something about the White House, things about mass arrests. Here's something on the CERN lab, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. This is on Nasara. I can't even touch that. So it's just wide-ranging stuff. So what I'm going to do now, and Michael, interrupt if you need to, this is an attempt to help everybody out, because I spent all this time, I'm like a hobbyist here going through these things. And what I've found is some of the stuff is really plausible, and some is less plausible, and some is not plausible. So this is bringing our critical mind, religious scholarship, because we need to have both scholarship and mysticism. I'm for both and. So this is some scholarship here. So let's start from the minus side. So I'm going to go through the first few of these. It's just so many. This could be a list of 20 things that are just outrageous, audacious ideas. For example, that the crucifixion of Jesus never actually happened. We're going to get to that in a minute. Second one there is on the CERN labs in Geneva, Switzerland, where they state in great detail that there's a city under there that's the kind of the headquarters for the global cabal. Third one there, that they're stating that they found the Ark of the Covenant under Gaza. And the fourth one there is the quantum financial system. So I don't know, Michael, if you've seen those 4 or 5 videos on, they call it QFS. And this is outrageously implausible to me, that they are going to kind of hit a switch and the financial system for the planet is going to be replaced with something that's equitable, that distributes wealth, that tokenizes, that uses precious metals and other things to back the currency. They're not going to permit the central bank digital currencies to be introduced, which they're about to be introduced. This tells us that next year they're going to change over to a completely new financial system. That to me is not plausible. There's no evidence to it, but they're telling you that. So let's look in the middle here. The middle is stuff that there's some independent evidence for these things. For example, the 3-eye Atlas is an ET vehicle. Everybody probably knows that, Michael. I think Michael, you showed there were 8 different varieties. People doing, like Bertie Jaworski and others that remote viewed, Elizabeth April and others, and many others that said that it's probably an ET vehicle. So there's that's plausible. It's plausible, at least to me, that there's some white hats, because I have a journalistic source who's more or less contacted me, is feeding me information about the white hats. The med beds and free energy, I think those that have been involved with this know that this stuff already exists. And finally, there's this very important notion that Trump is the front man for the white hats. I'm going to get to that. So how about on the good side, the plus side? All of these things you see here are beautifully presented. The idea of heart coherence practices. It's something that I've heard called heart math. It's a well-developed way to meditate through the heart. Then there's the teaching of one holy power, a beautiful teaching of oneness. Then there's the lovely teaching about the indwelling spirit of God, which is one of the main teachings of the Urantia book, which I follow. Beautifully stated. Morphic resonance, as Rupert Sheldrake's idea about how field effect of consciousness. So these are all pretty strong on the plus side. So,
if you just go back to that slide,
yes,
I just
Michael.
wanted to interject something, Byron, that, they've done several channeled messages about about what's happening in Antarctica, and of course the secret space programs. And what I have found was that it matched my research, like my exopolitics research, which is all kind of left brain analysis of multiple claims and leaked documents and FOIA documents and eyewitnesses and insiders coming forward and talking about these different topics. That on more than one occasion, I found that their channeled messages, especially from Valia, that really kind of like surprised me, was spot on. It was like, this is coming from a channeled source, completely independent, but it matches everything I've written in my Antarctica's Hidden History book or in my Secret Space Programs book. So I took that as that, well, I didn't agree with everything. I mean, they tend to be very supportive of artificial intelligence and how that's going to be part of this new world that's coming. And I'm kind of much more skeptical of that. But overall, I found it, much more on the plus side. As for CERN, I've gotten that. There's something very dark happening there. As for the crucifixion, I'm familiar with that being kind of like fake because that's what the Gnostic teachings teach. So those are my comments to that very exhaustive list you have there.
Michael, really, we all know you're the man on this because you've seen more of the evidence than probably anybody living, and so I think you would have a different and a better list than this. And Antarctica, for example, I've not done much research. I've heard it. We've all heard it, but I just find it implausible. So I'm going to definitely defer to you on Antarctica and many of these other things. CERN. We're going to get to that in a minute. Chemtrails. They're stating that's coming to an end, but I don't see the evidence of that. And the bottom there, the bombing of not Tehran, but Trump's bombing of the nuclear site in Iran. I don't know if you caught this, Michael, stated that it was actually not bombing that underneath that installation is another one of these deep underground cities of the cabal. And there's just no evidence for that. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to produce it. So moving on, although we could talk about this for hours, to look through a few of these that are really salient. And I think all of us know that 3i Atlas has a particular a function, and this is a really amazing ET named Zorion, one of my favorites, because they give him a voice that sounds like a Shakespearean actor. It's just lovely to listen to. And he's from the Syrian High Council, and he states this, that the 3i Atlas receives luminous codes that are containing structured harmonics arranged to interact with subtle fields in persons and planets. So this is a very strong statement about 3i Atlas, but they have many, many statements about it. This is just one. And here's just throw this in here for people to get a feeling for this, this solar flash that's supposed to happen. So just like you were discussing with David Clements when it was last week, Michael, that there's this pincher movement I think you guys are talking about. And from the inner Earth, energy's coming up from the inner Earth, and also energy's coming down from sort of AI Atlas and from the solar system. And there's a third element, which is there's going to be something like a solar flash, and they say different things at different times. And this is one of their ways of symbolizing it. And that will send light codes to all of us. Here's one that, this just on and on and on. They put out these unbelievable images that are created in AI. But, to create an image like this in AI, you got to tell it a lot to get this to come out. And this is their symbolization of what's happening to our planet, that there's this kind of salvation, this energy that's going to transform everything in a apocalyptic way. Then they have this lovely teaching about the indwelling spirit. I find this to be really helpful and well stated. So here's kind of a summary slide for this section. This is their depiction, I think, of their own audience. And their audience is really mainly young people who are starseeds, light workers. I mean, some of us elders are too, I suppose. But this to me is who they're trying to reach and what they want them to do. They want them to create what they call the cosmic heart grid by meditating, doing heart-centered meditative practices. And they have an elaborate explanation of how this is pouring energy into the Earth grid, which is being reconstructed with the help of higher beings of light. But we have to anchor it, and each of us is a pin in this grid which will envelop the earth. So we'll end this little section here, and Michael, we'll have a conversation after this one. But this one really struck me hard. This was a few days ago. This is a statement from Valier stating that Jesus was Pleiadian sponsored, that that Mary was a virgin and was inseminated with the help of extraterrestrials, with this soul who grew up to be Jesus. He disseminated the Christ frequency, but what really strikes me is this very radical, audacious thing to say, that the crucifixion was faked, that it was a holographic illusion. So this is a strong thing to say, and also that Jesus escaped after the fake death on the cross and went to the Far East, even took on a spouse and had progeny. So what we have here is a conjoining of an Islamic interpretation. The Islamic teaching in the Quran is that it was an illusion. He did not die on the cross, and there was no resurrection, that God just sort of ascended him at that time. And then that's combined with 19th century theosophy notion that Jesus went to the Far East, and there's records that he was in India and Tibet. So I found this to be, honest to God, I found this to be inconsistent with other teachings they've given. For example, this one here, this is from Zook, one of my favorites. His name is Zook. And this is a message from Zook on Easter last year, where he shows Jesus resurrecting, shows a resurrection, a beautiful image of the resurrection of Jesus. So in a way, that transmission is contradicted by this transmission. So there's a huge inconsistency that I find in their presentation about Jesus, and this is a very central issue. So now it's time for our intermission, Michael.
Yeah, that's very interesting about that Jesus message. I listened to that as well, and I tend to identify more with the Gnostic teachings, and the Gnostics, as you probably know better than I mean, they interpreted the life of Jesus as one of him showing us the way in terms of how to connect with the inner light, gnosis, know your inner light, that he was like the way shower, is like he did it, he connected with his inner light, and he was teaching people to connect with their own inner light. But of course, the apostolic church turned that around, flipped it over and said, well, no, you don't have an inner light. You're a sinner. What you need to do is worship the light, which is Jesus. and so that's how conventional religion went about. But for the Gnostics, the crucifixion is all part of the deception. So yeah, so that didn't strike me as odd, but I don't know, mate. Obviously, you have a different take on that.
Yeah, I'm a practicing Christian. I'm also a trained theologian, and I am wondering why this had to be inserted here, because for Christians, look, I mean, what's more likely to be right? This transmission, or, Martin Luther King, or Martin Luther, or St. Augustine, or thousands of saints, or the entire Catholic Church, and the entire Protestant Church, and the entire, Eastern Orthodox Church, that we all got it wrong. And now David Akira is going to straighten us out and tell us that this was a fake. It's just not going to fly with me. I mean, you don't have any evidence of it. And also what I see here is it's a borrowing from the Islamic apprehension, and also borrowing from certain well-known memes, which, to put it in a nutshell, Michael, this came up in the 19th century when people were turning against the church. And there was Nietzsche and people like that, trying to debunk and deconstruct Christianity. So you had the Theosophical movement and movements of that sort that said, "Oh no, Jesus was not an incarnate God. This was just a nice guy and had a good teaching like Buddha." And so there's nothing new about this. This is a way to debunk, deconstruct the oppressive church. But that's not a very compelling way to go about this. That you have great claims need great evidence. So there's no evidence presented here to overturn the world's largest religion. It's just not sufficient.
Well, going on the Gnostic texts, the discovery at Nag Hammadi showed us that there were these texts, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and that they kind of reflected the Gnostic teachings at the time, which were that Jesus was really teaching people how to connect with their inner self, that he had a romantic relationship with Mary, that Mary was actually the most informed of all of his followers, that Peter, the so-called rock that the church was built on, that he didn't understand Mary, and that they often argued. So these Gnostic Gospels talk about book. There was a book by Elaine Pagels called the Gnostic Gospels, and it just showed that these Gnostic Gospels in the early church were very popular, but that they were suppressed during the Council of Nicaea, when the official church was established and the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, that they decided to suppress all the Gnostic teachings and come up with the one definitive teaching that we know of today.
Michael, with due respect, that is not really what Gnosticism said. The Gnostics, for the most part, accepted the crucifixion as real, and Jesus and even more emphasized the fact that Jesus was an incarnate deity. Was not denied by any of them. That none of them said it was an illusion that he died. I don't know of any, and I've read all Elaine Pagels and studied this when I was in a seminary recently. And but the main point, the key point is the teaching of the indwelling spirit. And that's in Valentinus and other of the Gnostics. And that part of it was preserved even in the Nicene teaching of the Creed, because it was Athanasius, the great saint of Alexandria, who I've got to be kind of an expert about his teaching, that stated, because Jesus became God, because Jesus became man, we can become God. That's the Eastern teaching. And because he stated that, they changed the doctrine to a much more rich idea that humanity can become godlike, and there's an indwelling spirit. So then that branched off into the Eastern Church, but then the Roman Church subtracted that out. But the Eastern and Oriental Christianity did not. So the discourse that New Age folks and good folks use is not really accurate. So we can have a disputation on that, but we might want to leave it there unless you want to respond to that.
Oh no, I think it's fine. It's just one element of the many teachings or the information, the corpus of the information from GFL Station. But one of the things that intrigues me is that, when I spoke to David Nichols, he said that they use real people who do the channeling. So the channeled messages are coming from real people who claim to be in contact with these different extraterrestrials, but that they use voiceover articles, they use voiceover artists for making the YouTube videos, the audio component, and that the AI is only used for the computer generated graphics. But according to your research, you believe that what we're hearing from the GFL station, that's like a kind of like an AI version of the voiceover artist. Do you want to explain that?
I'm happy to do it because it's a very important issue. There's so many big issues with GFL that we could go on forever. But with them, what I think is happening is that the raw channel text is really strong and full of great content, and they're just doing what anybody would do, is they're dropping that raw thing into AI to massage it and put it together in beautiful sentences and just filtering out things that need to be filtered out, that are just grammar errors, really. So I think it's authentic teaching, but there's no way anybody can channel with such great, expression and grammar. It has to be edited. I say that as somebody who's published many channeled books by channels. I've edited their beautiful channelings. They're just raw, and so that's all. It's not that big of a point. But everybody today is going to process whatever they do with AI. I'm not against that at all, as long as you disclose it, which they do.
Yes, exactly. They do acknowledge the AI, and they also have this strange message now at the beginning of each of their channelings, where they say that this is a work of fiction, that any kind of representation of real life actors and so forth is accidental and just enjoyed for entertainment purposes. So, I mean, that's a very strange disclaimer. I would speculate that maybe they're doing that because I think that they are connected to some genuine extraterrestrial intelligences. And I noticed the same thing for another kind of source that was channeling or communicating with the extraterrestrials, and that is the Cosmic Agency, Gosha, a Polish researcher that was working in Spain, that she began to communicate with these Tagetan extraterrestrials. But they also had a similar kind of a disclaimer that, this is a work of fiction. And so I wonder if that's put there just to protect themselves from the cabal.
I think that the lawyers had to have a hand in protecting them by this kind of disclaimer. It's a very radical disclaimer, though. I just kind of amazed and shocked that they would say it's any correspondence to reality is pure coincidence. So I don't know, Michael. That's one of the things that I want to ask. If you could get David Nichols to come on your show, ask him. I just don't get it, because the preponderance of this stuff is that this is highly substantive and it does map into important realities. There's no doubt about it. So why this disclaimer? I just don't know.
Well, I've come across it before. I've come across whistleblowers. Whistleblowers who have said, like one, for example, is a whistleblower that worked with Paola Harris, and he was instructed that he had to put a similar disclaimer at the beginning of his book. This was called The Catchers of Heaven, by Michael Wolff. So Michael Crevant Wolff was an insider, and he wrote a book, a kind of semi-autobiographical book about his experiences in the programs, and he was instructed that he had to put this disclaimer at the beginning that this is a work of fiction, and that's the only way it would be passed. And I've come across that before with others. So yeah, this makes me think that maybe you need to do something like that. Otherwise, the cabal, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, will come after you.
Michael, let's leave it there. I just can't fathom why. Any other good reason? for that. Other than that, there may be mentally unstable individuals who get involved with this and fall down this benign rabbit hole and go crazy. It's so absorbing that maybe they have to protect themselves from lawsuits from people like that may be harmed by the information.
Okay. And by mentally unstable, you're saying there's readers, the audience.
Yeah, in the audience. Yeah.
Okay, that might take it too far, and problems happen.
Yeah, they get fanatic about it, and really, I mean, this can arouse a fanatical reaction, even in me. I mean, I had a period when I was just like, evangelizing this with people, and I realized, what a mistake am I making here? This needs critical analysis first, and so that's the phase I'm in now. So these are very strong religious appeals that can very helpful for people, but very unstable minds, it might go the wrong direction.
Okay, well, if you're ready to resume the presentation.
Here we go. So the second half, you guys, I'm going to motor through this just so much to deal with, is the exopolitics, and this is a kind of emblematic slide from Ashtar. But this is just to get this in front of everybody. This is, we want to see what their definitions are. And here's one about the deep state. It's stuff we've all heard before, but have a look at this. I'll read it, the first part. Who are these hidden powers? On your world, they have been called the Cabal, the Deep State, and the Dark Controllers. They comprise a web of elitist families, secret societies, and corrupt leaders who have long pulled the strings of government and financiers. And the rest of it says that they're in touch with extraterrestrial factions and in a way dependent on them. So that's their definition. So I'm going to go kind of quickly through some of the huge claims that they're making. And this is the one about the portal that exists beneath the CERN laboratory, which is a huge claim to make, because they're stating that this portal was used to contact from this underground city, to contact Draco reptilians from this site, and to have human trafficking through the portal. That is to say, they were trafficking refugees, people from war zones, orphan people that they picked up on the street. They were engaged in significant human trafficking with the Draco reptilians and literally teleporting human beings to this, far distant Draco empire. And doing this as a sort of like a business enterprise in exchange for information and technology from the Dracos. This is a huge claim, and that there's no evidence for it, but it's a remarkable statement that I invite everybody to look at. Here's another one. This is Israel and Palestine. This is a shocker. This is an audacious statement about what's really happening there, that was presented after the Trump's peace plan was more or less accepted for the ceasefire. And this is another one of these statements where it's layered from the top to the bottom with new things most of us have never heard before. And this is important enough that I'll read it to you. The Galactic Federation observers have been overhead, ensuring the struggle on the ground in Gaza did not escalate beyond control. There were moments when the dark side attempted to push things to apocalyptic extremes. For instance, schemes to deploy weapons of mass destruction in the region and to drag superpower nations into a global conflagration. And it goes on to say that they interdicted particular missiles in mid-flight and made them look like they were duds. And they did everything consistent with cosmic law to stop this from becoming some kind of nuclear holocaust. It's a very big statement, but there's much bigger things beyond that. They're stating that, so this is an image that might be familiar of the Ark of the Covenant. That's just a symbolic representation of what they're claiming they found. They're claiming that under Gaza, under the whole region, is a massive network of tunnels, much bigger than the Hamas tunnels, right? So the Hamas had an extensive tunnel network. This is under that network is a huge, almost like a city of artifacts, ancient artifacts, of tools, of weapons, of biolabs are down there, and that they claim and state that the special forces went down into this area and cleared it out after the ceasefire. So the ceasefire was in effect, barely in effect, and there's a little bit of evidence that something was happening, because it was reported, and I looked this up, that there were tremors in the area right after the ceasefire and loud explosions in the area that could be heard. So this is evidence that there was, what they're saying was, a kinetic activity of the positive military underground, and they were arresting the cabal operatives down there, and made a massive breakthrough. There are really two big, massive breakthroughs here. One is the CERN lab, which was really a city underneath the CERN, particle accelerator. It's like the headquarters of the cabal. They eliminated that. And then the other big headquarters is this one under Gaza. And it's a huge discourse with a lot of detail, saying there are artifacts from the Solomon's Temple. There was the Ark of the Covenant. There were bioweapons labs, as I mentioned, and much more. They extends all the way to the Sinai area, and evidence that was a landing area for extraterrestrial craft in ancient times. And they found a device that can be used to activate the Pyramid of Giza. And that was a recent transmission, which I haven't even had time to listen to. So these are huge things being claimed. And this is an image they give.
Can I just interject there?
Absolutely. Yes.
So Byron, as far as my research is concerned, the deep state, the cabal, they have been trying vigorously to manufacture a Gog and Magog war, an end times war, and that's why they kind of triggered these conflicts in the Middle East. You have General Wesley Clark talking about 7 Middle East nations in 2001 that were going to be targeted in regime change and so forth. You have the Ukraine-Russia war. I looked at all of this, and my view was that this was all part of an effort to create a Gog and Magog end times war that would result in nuclear weapons being used. But I think what the Trump administration did, in a way that kind of like is, still very confusing to a lot of people, they nullified all of that. Like Trump's attack on Iran's nuclear facility, on the one hand, people looked at it and thought, oh my God, this is going to start a war. But on the other hand, he gave the Iranians plenty of warning that he was going to attack their nuclear facilities. The Iranians got their people out. No one was killed. And, the Iranians responded in a token way. And so that he put an end to that kind of missile barrage that was going on between Iran and Israel. And so I think this kind of Gog and Magog end times war was neutralized by the White Hats, and Trump was their front man, just as the GFL station claims.
Michael, I remember your very first book that came out, I think it was in 2005, where you took on some of these issues, the Iraq war and what was really going on behind the scenes. So been following your work for a long time, and you speak with, real authority about this. And I agree with you that there is at least the appearance and probably the reality that Trump is working with the Earth Alliance, as they call it, the White Hats, and he did contain he and others contained the war that was going to happen between Iran and Israel. It looked like it was going to really blow up. So there's something to that, and there's there is a ceasefire. Nobody thought there would be a ceasefire. It's not really holding out very well at all, and they're still funding Israel. So there's a lot of contradictions in this. But maybe, the idea is that it's incremental. We can't just pull out. We still have to fund them and appear to support them. It's hard to say, but I don't know if you gathered, Michael, that it states that a peace treaty underground, that is with the cabal, was also signed on site, really in this, as a result of this underground fight and winning that battle, that the cabal said, okay, look, we're going to turn over all of these artifacts to you, things from the Solomon's Temple, things that go pre-Sumerian artifacts, magical devices. We're going to turn it all over to you if you cut us some slack, give us some concessions. So, Trump, the deal maker, I guess, was the one that made this covert deal. That they got away with some of what they wanted in exchange for us winning this underground battle and getting all of their tools and weapons, either to reverse engineer for better use or to shut it down, including, of course, the human trafficking. So yeah, I think there's a lot to it. But let's look at the figure of Trump and the White Hats, and this will conclude the discussion, because again, here I am, about 1 mile from the White House, and my friends are like, "What are you doing?" I mean, you're talking about the White Hats, and they're allied with Trump, and how plausible is this? So here's this a White Hat depiction, and this is telling us that the White Hats run Truth Social, Trump's Truth Social media. They run it. This is the statement. There's a long, very long, like over an hour discourse about this from Ashtar, but here's the kind of the high points. That these posts, Trump is not putting these posts in there. And, listen, guys, there's no way he writes that well. And that stuff is poorly written anyway. That the messages are designed to confuse their enemy. They're all over the map if you read this stuff, and I'm trying to read it. But there's coded signaling to the White Hats that go in there. There are White Hats that compose these messages and White Hats that receive these messages. And then, I thought, well, this can't be right. This is not plausible. And I had it in the implausible column, Michael. But then 2 days ago, did everybody see what happened? There were 160 posts in 2 hours that were posted in the middle, midnight, two nights ago. And so I went in there to look at this, and there's no way Trump put that on there. And secondly, it was meant to confuse, but also send messages, and also to justify what the White Hats are doing. And you can, what they're saying, Michael, I'm sure you've gathered this. They're looking at who in the media is reacting to this in a way that shows that they're pro-cabal, right? And it's true. You can see it. You can look at the ones that polarize around this, and the 160 posts drove them crazy, like the Daily Beast and the Guardian in England. They literally think that Trump is doing this. He's putting a post every minute for 2 hours, different 160 posts, and in 2 hours. So anyway, so Trump. So this is the notion that Trump is the white man, not the white man, the front man. So here's something. I don't know if you saw this, Michael, that they had an entire teaching about, not teaching, but a statement about the dinner with the tech moguls, right? So here is an amazing image of Trump with one of his chief enemies in tech. Okay, Zuckerberg is looking relaxed and is laughing. And then to the other side is Bill Gates. And Bill Gates is looking relaxed and smiley. And so they have this huge discourse saying this was all theater to show that the tech moguls have come over to the light. Zuckerberg, these guys who are censoring everything coming out from the right wing, right? Through COVID, et cetera, especially Zuckerberg, they're not doing it anymore. So this is trying to convince you that these guys have come over to the side of the white hats. And, I think there's evidence
on that, Byron. I mean, this was around the same time that you started to have a lot of the big channels that had been censored on YouTube being restored. So there were a lot of people who had their channels cancelled on YouTube that suddenly had their channels back with all their followers and all their posts. So this was kind of like, I think, a very tangible sign that something fundamental did happen, that the big tech did switch sides, just as the GFL station was claiming, which was, I thought, quite extraordinary. And the other thing was that Melania Trump, who many believe, and I think correctly, is actually very closely associated with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, that she is herself a Pleiadian starseed, that she hosted a dinner with all these guys and she was looking very relaxed with them. And it's like, well, that wouldn't have happened because Melania is not the sort that would cuddle up to people that are still working with the cabal.
I thought it was amazing. I wish I could find a better image that shows her sitting next to Bill Gates. And if you may recall, Michael, that Valier, I think it was, said, she's a Pleiadian starseed, and she is like a queen as far as we are concerned, because look at her stature, look at her, how relaxed she is. And look at Bill Gates. Bill Gates looks like a different man. And I'm sure you noticed, Michael, that Bill Gates came out about 10 days later and said, well, maybe there really isn't a big deal with climate change. Did you catch that?
I didn't get the timing, but that's significant.
Yeah, maybe it was more than several weeks later. And then, so Ashtar had a big comment on that. In fact, Ashtar put this thing out that I have a hard time agreeing with, saying that climate change is a hoax, more or less. And it sounds like the far right, what it would say about climate. And it's saying that, did you notice that Bill Gates actually kind of renounced, because he was one of the most important spokesperson for the fact that we need to address climate change with reducing emissions and all of that. He was one of the most forceful people. In fact, he had pouring money, like millions, probably billions, into mitigating the emissions. And now he's no longer doing that. He's putting that money into poverty. That's what he stated. So this is evidence that the GFL's right, that this particular meeting, which everybody should study, was a massive breakthrough for the White House. So now I want to kind of conclude, Michael, on this thing about med beds, if I may, and about Trump and the figure of Trump. So everybody probably knows what this is. So this is Trump's AI-generated, short video that he posted on Truth Social, stating that we will have med bed hospitals. I mean, this is outrageous. It's unbelievably that he posted, the White House posted this pretty convincing video of Trump introducing these hospitals, right? So here's another image. It's on, they're simulating Fox News, and this is what these things look like. These are the med beds, and we're all going to have these, and they produce these. At some point, the GFL says they've been mass produced on the moon, okay, and they're going to distribute them throughout the world. And this is what's going to result. This is one of their images that they're showing. Grandma is getting healed of dementia, and so Trump is introducing this. So the fact that Trump's allowed this to be posted tells you a lot. It tells you it's pretty good clue that he knows what is going on. And as was stated by Michael, better than me, the Israeli head of spy satellites.
Haim Eshed.
Yes, that he stated 5-6 years ago that Trump was in contact with the Galactic Federation, and Trump wanted to announce all this stuff. And that's a pretty credible guy. So here we are, in 2025, and here, he's announcing this new era of healthcare, which is so radical. And so this is kind of, go ahead, Michael, please.
I was just going to say, it is radical because we've been brainwashed into thinking pharmaceuticals are the way that people get healed. But the truth is that you can go back to the 1960s and that there were medical researchers like Dr. Robert Becker, who started to find out that by stimulating certain electromagnetic currents and specific frequencies for the cells and different organs, you could start to regenerate limbs. You could heal the organs. All of that was suppressed. And worse than being suppressed, it was actually weaponized. So they did that. So today it seems radical, but in that 60 years, all of that research was classified. It was used in secret space programs for people who get injured in space warfare. They have limbs regrown. They have their age reversed. All of these things, but of course, for us, it seems like science fiction. But it's being used for many decades, and there are many witnesses that talk about having experienced these med beds and being healed or had limbs regrown and so forth.
Certainly JP, who you brought on so many times, and he's talked about it, and so many others. So yeah, I definitely accept this there. But what my point, I guess you would agree also, is that this would cause a collapse of 20% of the GDP. That's what healthcare consists of. It's the largest industry in America practically. And so how is that going to happen? And in that connection, Michael, I had a question for you, because I read your analytical essay about the kind of betrayal by the Galactic Federation that was reported by one of your interviewees. Her name was Andrea
Martin.
Yes, that was a very striking a piece that you wrote, stating that there may have been some compromise reached because the largest corporations, know what's going on here, and they came basically to the ETs and said, "You can't do this because it'll collapse the world economy. You can't introduce free energy and medbed devices." So they had to back off.
That's right. Yes, it's been more than one contactee that has talked about that the Galactic Federation leadership has made these compromises with the deep state that have led to the rank and file in the Galactic Federation being very upset that disclosure's been delayed, the release of a lot of these life-saving technologies has been delayed, but this is a consequence of people making deals at a leadership level with a kind of like psychopathic global cabal. But now with the white hats in ascendance, you would hope that these deals can kind of move forward with the release of these technologies.
And Michael, maybe this is an implication of your analysis, which is that was written in June, as I recall, when you talked about this betrayal. And isn't it interesting that right after that is when 3i Atlas shows up in July, right? So to me, I'm just inferring that they had another trick up their sleeve. The GFL, the Federation decided, okay, we're going to go full bore with changing the energetics of the solar system. And as was stated in my essay, but it very clearly, brought out in your interview with David Clements, that this is a strategy that is going to rout the psychopaths. They're not going to be able to operate, and they're turning up sort of like, I don't know, something like shooting, flushing people out of a building with fumigating the place, so they have to leave. And so basically they had to back off, and it would appear to be a betrayal, but they came forward with this energetic transformation of the solar system, showing that they are really in control. But so that in effect the cabal will melt away because of that. So that's a speculation.
Yeah, well, I think the emergence of 3i Atlas, as you said, just a month after I wrote that article about the Galactic Federation, betrayal, that that has changed things. And many have talked about 3i Atlas and what it represents, but it seems that there's a consensus that it is raising the consciousness and the frequencies on the planet and our solar system, and that whatever control the deep state, the cabal had, that's rapidly eroding, just for the simple reason that millions of people are now paying attention to space events. And what that represents energetically is an expansion of consciousness. And when you expand your consciousness to start thinking about the sun, the comets, or 3i Atlas and the planets and all of that, that expansion of consciousness allows organizations like this GFL to infuse human consciousness with these liberating ideals. So now people are like very open to a lot of this information, like the med beds and the truth about extraterrestrial life and technologies.
I think that's a good place to conclude, because what is really going on here is a co-creative project with the GFL and all of their allies off planet, wherein we have to do our part. So by June of last year, there wasn't yet enough consciousness for them to act more forthrightly that we now see. July, August, September, and now what do we see today is a defeat, these alleged defeats of the main cabal sites at the CERN labs underneath Gaza and these other locations, these DUMB, these underground locations that are being routed allegedly in the last few months, because the people of the earth are rising up, and they're providing through their consciousness and, by the way, their prayers, that this elicits the transformation that is now being reported. So that it's the tipping point. In a way, I think in August, what I noticed in September when I was writing this piece, I noticed them saying, "Oh my God, this is now it's cascading in the right direction." They kind of had, and it's in my essay. There was a particular statement by Kalin, I think it was, it was a celebration. It was a rhapsodic statement, saying that you have done, the humans on Earth, through your consciousness, we have now passed a point of no return, and the negative timelines have collapsed. And I think she was announcing that in early October. That must have been early October. So see how far we've come from June, when they had to compromise allegedly with the corporate overlords of the planet. Now we're to a point that the reptiles are on the run, so to speak. So I think that's the most positive message we can leave people with today. And if I may, Michael, there's a parallel to the Urantia teaching, which states that there's a mission called the Magisterial Mission, and there's a statement from this very high being that the advanced neighboring civilizations, they are working with those civilizations right now. That is, higher beings, angelic beings, and deities from what the Urantia book calls the central universe. This is a depiction of the central eternal universe in the Urantia revelation. So I'll leave it there with the slideshow.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to, direct people, and you can tell them about your Substack website, where you have this free paper, 21 pages, that goes into a lot of the information you just shared. If people want to kind of like dig deeper into the GFL station and their message and what you've pointed out, that they could go to this, to your Substack website, Exo Realities. So you want to talk about that and any other websites that you want people to visit?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, this in particular that I've created pretty much for the audience, for your audience, Michael, is for those who are already primed into this issue of ET, benevolent ET intervention that we're talking about. So if you just Google Exo Realities Substack, you'll find this and sign up to a free subscription. This has to be covered. I mean, I'm covering this, and I'm covering anything adjacent to it. In particular, also the technology, what I call exotech, exotic technology, and other beings of light that we are hearing from. All of this is in one sort of world of transformation that will be covered here. So I hope people go there and check it out.
Well, I think it is very important that we have someone with your kind of background, Byron, taking a closer look at GFL Station and assessing the entire corpus of the messages they've been putting out, and give those that are kind of like curious a thumbnail of what's going on there. And I know you go through the three different perspectives on the GFL station. I think that it represents an important and very benevolent intervention in human affairs on the behalf of extraterrestrials that are working with David Nichols and his channelers. And I think it's definitely very important. And you can see from the phenomenal growth of it in terms of YouTube subscriptions that it's resonating with a lot of people, and ultimately that's what counts. It's like if you feel good, if you feel like that this has really opened you up, the messages are like helping you reflect and connect with your higher self or your inner self, the infinite source consciousness, as David Clements calls it, or George Cavassalis calls it. If information helps you connect with that, then that's positive, because anything that helps you connect with your inner light is positive. Those things that kind of like direct you to external realities, that's where you get the kind of shenanigans of the deep state.
Well said, Michael. I think that there are two things that I hope folks come away with, is that this is building upon a movement that earlier on I pointed out was called conspirituality, which is a valid movement with a lot of flaws, but they have kind of transcends and includes that movement, which has been going on for decades. So they're pulling memes out of that, but they're building and enhancing something that's unheard of now, which is the GFL message. But it still has I think the rudiments of some of the flaws of the conspirituality movement, which was so anti-conventional religion that it kind of threw out some of the baby with the bathwater. So I bring a bit of that analysis here. I call it exotheology. And so that's the contribution I want to make, is that let's keep our critical thinking. Let's do both and. Let's do these practices. These are perennial, beautiful practices, as you said, Michael. Both you and I have had some transformation from listening to this. We're both sort of confessing, and it is the case that anybody that listens to this gets a boost, and it's significant. But the political side of the political message of this is where we got to kind of put our critical hats on it. Is this really all of this plausible, or is this rhetoric? Sometimes higher beings, I've noticed, they use rhetoric to build up a positive charge. It isn't exactly like that. They're working with your faith, trying to inspire an optimistic view. So let's bring that more critical thinking to GFO, because there's a lot at stake here as to whether, the truth of this.
So, Byron, where do people go if they want to get in touch with you, or they want to dig deeper into your work and get some of your books?
Just look under my name, Byron, last name Belitsos. I have a number of books that I've published and written. My main site is called RodanInstitute.com, and Exorealities is a project of that institute, which is focused on the Urantia revelation in the largest, grandest sense. It's speculative. It gets me into trouble with Urantia people. But I'd prefer that there you go, beautiful. Thank you. I would prefer that your audience, Michael, goes to exorealities.substack and kind of move from there, because I have links to everything there.
Okay, so just go to Exorealities on Substack, and from that you can launch into the corpus of Byron's excellent work. So I want to thank you for coming back on Exopolitics Today, and I look forward to learning more about your investigation into the GFL station in a few months.
Good, thank you, Michael. I'll keep you posted, and thanks for your great work.
Okay, aloha.
All the best too. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.